Welcome to today's Explainer. Have you ever wondered what actually separates a fleeting career trend from a truly unshakable professional legacy? We're living in an era where market demands shift practically overnight. It's crazy. But what if, instead of constantly chasing the newest fad, you became an ethical architect? Someone who builds a career on foundations so deep and structures so sturdy that you can adapt to literally anything. Today, we're going to explore how to master the trunk of knowledge. It's this powerful framework that blends ancient wisdom, hard science, and counter-conventional business strategies to create a career that is not just highly successful, but deeply meaningful.
Let's dive right into this by looking at a brilliant concept from the French philosopher and mathematician René Descartes. He actually compared the entirety of human knowledge to a giant tree. For Descartes, the roots represent metaphysics and philosophy. The trunk? Well, that's physics. And those branches growing out of that trunk are all the applied sciences, things like medicine, mechanics, and morality. It's such a perfect metaphor because it illustrates exactly how abstract logic bridges with the actualities of nature. When you master that trunk of knowledge, you're essentially forming an undeniable professional superpower.
So here is the map of our journey today. First, we'll look at the roots of purpose. Then, we'll climb up to the trunk of physics. After that, we'll branch out into the entrepreneurial mindset. And finally, we'll wrap up with algorithmic thinking and grit.
All right, let's start with part one, the roots of purpose.
Look, every meaningful career needs a philosophical and moral grounding that goes way beyond just, earning a paycheck. Without roots, a tree simply falls over the second the wind blows, right? Philosophy is often called the mother of all sciences. Really, it's a search for a general understanding of values and reality. But what's absolutely crucial to grasp here is that a true education isn't just about accumulating raw facts. Honestly, if knowledge doesn't make you a better person, it's kind of futile. The ultimate goal of education is to change a person, to help us become better in all our dimensions, acting as a vital guide for how we treat others and determine our true course in life.
Consider great thinkers like Plato and Aristotle for a second. Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, proposed that the ultimate aim for any person is simply to be happy, to achieve what he called the summum bonum, or the highest good. And how exactly do you achieve this highest good? Well, he argued it's through the law of moderation and virtue. That is the rich, ethical soil our tree absolutely needs to grow.
And we actually see this search for a strong ethical anchor across the world's great teachings. For instance, looking at the Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad emphasized a crystal-clear ethical foundation. He stated that following the guidance of the Quran and the Sunnah ensures one will never go astray. This beautifully illustrates how establishing a firm moral compass provides a non-negotiable framework for our integrity. It ensures that as our careers grow, they're rooted in solid principles that prioritize ethical behavior way above any opportunistic shortcuts.
Which brings us to part two, the trunk of physics. Now that our roots are firmly planted, let's move up the tree to the trunk, where that abstract philosophy translates into tangible physical laws. So why focus on engineering and physics? Because engineering literally gives you superpowers. It teaches you how to design real solutions to real-world problems using math, science, and technology. And getting a degree in this field keeps some incredible doors open for you. It's a massive stepping stone to medicine, law, or business. Actually, physics and engineering graduates often become highly successful MBAs and entrepreneurs. Why? Because they've mastered the fundamental laws governing complex physical systems. And here's the secret. If you understand the forces and dynamics of the physical world, you can apply that exact same logical rigor to financial models and business structures. It's a real game changer.
So the crucial takeaway here is that engineering is a true profession. It's much like being a surgeon or a lawyer. It requires highly specific education, and most importantly, it comes with an immense responsibility for societal well-being. Think about it. People are putting their trust and literally their lives in your hands when you build a bridge, design a medical device, or code an autonomous vehicle. That is exactly why those philosophical roots we just discussed are so critical to the structural integrity of this trunk.
Let's keep moving up. Part 3, the entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay, once you have that solid technical trunk, how do you branch out and apply it to the global market? Professor John Mullins from the London Business School points out a super fascinating contrast here. Traditional Business School Strategy 101 teaches these really rigid rules, right? Stick to what you know, seek huge markets, buy your assets up front. But true innovators, they use what he calls counter-conventional mindsets. They completely break the traditional corporate rules. They say yes we can to unfamiliar problems, even if they literally have to learn the technology on the fly. They think narrow instead of broad, and they beg and borrow assets rather than buying them.
Let's take that concept of think narrow, not broad.
Big corporate wisdom usually dictates that you absolutely must target massive markets to move the financial needle. But true entrepreneurial architects know it is far better to focus on solving a highly specific problem for a highly specific group of people. I mean, it's exactly what Nike did in the early days by focusing exclusively on distance runners. By providing maximum, undeniable value to a narrow target, you build a fiercely loyal base, rather than just getting lost in the noise trying to be everything to everyone.
Another fantastic counter-conventional rule is beg and borrow, but please don't steal. This is all about being a brilliant steward of resources without ever exploiting others. Mullins shares this great example of a zipline business. Instead of buying massive, expensive tracts of land and building crazy towers, the entrepreneurs just borrowed what was already there. They used existing trees and literally borrowed parking lots. This creates maximum efficiency without any unnecessary waste. It is resourcefulness in its absolute purest form. Finally, we reach part 4, algorithmic thinking and grit.
So, what are the mental mechanics you need to sustain this tree over an entire lifetime? Well, it starts with algorithmic thinking. Going way back to our roots, Aristotle actually believed that correct thinking could be reduced to specific rules. Today we see this beautifully realized in engineering. Algorithmic thinking is simply a step-by-step process used to solve problems without leaving anything to chance. The loop is super simple but profound. Think, sketch, code, test, repeat. Whether you're writing a complex software program in MATLAB or just managing a global team, relying on an iterative, logical process is what keeps you moving forward so efficiently.
But hey, what happens when that test phase inevitably fails? That is where our next concept comes in, grit. Grit is defined as passionate persistence, and honestly, it is the absolute main secret to success. If you have grit, you don't view failure as a deterrent. You view it as data. It's just another reason to iterate. It requires adopting a growth mindset, where you truly believe your abilities can be developed through hard work, rather than a fixed mindset that tells you your talents are just static, unchangeable traits.
In fact, the research clearly shows that long-term success relies heavily on these non-cognitive skills. It's not just about raw intellect. The top skills that complement technical knowledge and vault a career forward are, number 1, grit, that passionate persistence we just talked about. Number 2, conscientiousness, which helps you maintain professional integrity and cultivate those vital relationships. And number 3, planning, the actual ability to execute on your goals. These are the daily nutrients that keep the tree thriving.
So we've climbed all the way from the ethical roots of philosophy, straight up the sturdy trunk of physics and engineering, out into the counter-conventional branches of entrepreneurship, and finally into the sustaining practices of algorithmic thinking and grit. I want to leave you with a provocative thought to really reflect on. Look at your own career and life, especially as we navigate this wild, rapidly changing AI era. Please don't just blindly follow market trends. Pick a path aligned with your own psychology and values. Ask yourself, which of these mindsets are embodied in you today? And more importantly, how are you going to use your complete tree of knowledge to act as an ethical architect and build the world we so desperately need? Something to think about, right? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.